Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am super excited because I have Charles Ward on the line. Say hello, Charles.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well. How's it with you? You're out in Japan, right?
Yep, and
Well,
it just started snowing today, so we have a lot of shoveling to do.
what part are
But
you in
good.
Hokkaido, or where are you in Japan?
I'm in central Japan in the prefecture called Nagano. They had the Winter Olympics back in '98.
I
You know,
have I have snowboarded in Nagano.
awesome. Maybe
Well,
Hakuba? Hakuba?
yeah, it was probably 15 years ago, but it was a whole lot of fun.
I would have been
Um,
here.
well, so this is an interesting call because I've played a number of your games, which I've reviewed, and I'll link them. Haze Island, Rokomon, Towers, and part of it is that you make these print and play games,
Yep.
and so it's been really interesting to check them out and play them. And I know you've put them into contests. But to start, can you give us a sense of like how you got into game design, how you got into print and play? Because I think you've really established like you're big print and play, and I'm very curious to sort of how you entered that scene.
Well, my sort of as a gamer, I do come to it quite late in life. Instead of playing a lot of games like uh, throughout, I don't know, my life, for me, it's been like a later thing. And I'm a teacher here in Japan, and I teach kids, and games were a way for me to try and get the students to imagine themselves in a world of English in which they could exercise and practice all the things that we were learning. Actually, what it should have been role-playing games, but I thought maybe board games would have been a way to do it. So I started designing games to try and meet that sort of need, and the games were way more interesting than the English that we were learning. And educational games, they're not really a thing in our space because a board game is very much its own thing, and educational games are a different thing. They're both games, but I really find it interesting. The sort of modern day board game design space, it's just fantastic. So I went into that rabbit hole, started to make games, discovered Board Game Geek, and I've never looked back, really.
Well, and so your initial games you made were specifically for your class and the kids you were teaching, or did you start on your own independently from there?
I was teaching independently as a teacher, and I could do whatever I wanted with the kids. So I don't plan as much as I should, so I improvise a lot, and things just lead in one way or on the other. And it's usually the kids expressing an interest, and that's kind of what we do, that's the way I like to teach. Uh, so I could try things out with my students, and I had a lot of students, and it was really good. But I wasn't really getting. I mean, I was new making games. I've been illustrating and doing graphic design before that, so producing them isn't so difficult. Getting the idea to work and to gel as a game is the hard challenge.
Sure, sure, sure. And so going back to getting onto BGG, like how did I mean, most folks who are seeing these videos and knows what BGG is, but how did you enter it as a new designer? Like, can you take us a little through, like, lots of folks are interested in figuring out how they can get in and start making games. And some people get caught up in sort of pitching and sort of trying to get publishers to dive in. But it sounds like you found a different entry point. Can you talk sort of back how that process went?
It's definitely out of necessity because I'm in a place here in Japan, fairly rural part of Japan, where there aren't a lot of foreigners that you can play with, or a lot of Japanese people who play board games. It's not as big as it is over there in the States. So I'm really out of options for trying out and play testing games that are games, not like educational, things that I can't test with my students, things that require language and what have you. So having Board Game Geek as a place where you can develop games in a like open environment where the work in progress threads of the design forums are just a really nice community where you can say, "Hey, I'll test your game and let you know what I think about it, and hopefully you'll do the same." And you can play test each other's games and improve on them. And before Tabletop Simulator, you would put a print and play file, and they would then print it, cut it up, and play it and tell you what they think. And this is great. But on top of that, there's a contest. There's a whole community of contest that are happening, and you can enter with very specific sort of limitations. So maybe a 9 card game or an 18 card game,
Right.
uh, just playing cards, or all different sort of limitations. So with that, it's basically a design exercise that you can sort of go into and try and put a game out, share your ideas, and let people see, what you can come up with, but also look at other people's ideas and give feedback. That really does make you better as a designer, because you're having to see, the struggles that other people make, and you feel better that you also have them too. Like it's not you're not alone when you're designing. But it was really out of necessity that I don't have anyone really around me to test and play the games as much as I'd like to. So it was a absolutely crucial for me to move from, English to board games.
Oh, very
More,
cool. And yeah, yeah. And actually, if I'm just, and I can link it to later, but if you're just going to BGG and you want to look at some of that designer space and the contest and stuff, presumably, if I just had to guess, is that going into the forums? Like, what area of BGG is that community in?
it's definitely in the forum section, and there is a sub forum, I suppose it's called, of game design, within which there are maybe 2 or 3 threads that are important. One is the contests, and they're all on one section. Then you have the work in progress, which is your sort of baby that you put out there in the world. You put it in that sub forum. And the other one is game design, and that's the general chit chat that you get most threads popping up in. And there's some really amazing feedback. If you want to learn about probability, there's something specifically for that. And there are some really clever people out there answering these questions. I'm like, wow, this is such a great resource. And it's really active, and that's the cool thing. Since then, there have been maybe 1 or 2 places on Facebook that have a similar sort of energy to them. One is the Board Game Design Labs, and another one, Tabletop Designers Guild, maybe. I'm not sure. Um, so it's kind of like spreading out. And it's amazing that the board game design space has such a cool sort of forum and public sort of space to develop and discuss games, where I've started looking into role-playing game design, and there's nothing quite like the energy and the amount of people
Oh, that's
working on
interesting.
games. Yeah, I couldn't
Okay.
find an equivalent. Even, I know there's Board Game Geek has a spin-off, RPG Geek, but it's just not quite the same level of
Huh.
bubbliness.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I
And
was,
actually, just thinking before I forget, I don't know if you've seen my Q&A with Ayako Teranishi, but it's all about the Japanese indie board game scene.
it's crazy, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. In your area, it might be a little rural, but in rural, but in there, in a number of the cities, there's a very vibrant
Yeah,
board
yeah.
game scene in Japan for sure.
In the cities, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have my crew of local board game fanatics, some of which are designers, some of which are cafe owners, and we have a little team when we go to Tokyo Game Market.
Oh, there you
And
go. Awesome.
yeah, I've done that show maybe 10 times now, and it's great because every time we get a little bit better, we get a little bit bigger, and I know what I'm doing, and my Japanese is getting better, and but it's always like yeah, disorganized chaos for me. And going there, it's crazy. It's very short. The duration is very short, and there's a lot of people, and it's just like it clogs up. Like nothing moves at one point in the day, where everyone's just standing still, waiting for space to be able to just keep moving forwards. It's
That's
crazy.
crazy. That is
Mm.
crazy. Okay,
Uh,
so
good
so
though.
back to the story. You're getting all this feedback. You're entering these challenges. You're getting those, barriers, the boundaries to work and design from that'll help, helps
Yep.
settle, your options and focus your efforts.
Mhm.
What was your first recognition? How did what was the game? Was it Hayes Island? What was the game that sort of got on the map?
It was Hayes Islands, and uh, it had been one game and and morphed into another game. I think it was Hayes City before it was Hayes Islands,
Sure.
and Hayes Islands just seemed to fit the game. And it was a game that I worked on as well, not my first game. The first game I worked on for like a year on a daily basis, and by the time that year had elapsed, it had completely morphed into something else that was unrecognizable and
Sure,
unusable.
sure, sure.
And then that happened again and again. And finally, I got a bit better at this. And Hayes Islands came up. and it won a few print and play contests. It won the survival contest by Thunderglyph Games, and it was nominated for a Golden Geek for the print and play category. So I was super chuffed at that, and
Awesome.
that was exciting. I thought,
Eh,
okay, well, maybe this is it, do something.
Maybe you figured it out. Now, have you ever? So, I mean, I know that you continue to do print and place. Have you ever
Always.
and looked into or considered other publishing routes or Kickstarters as well, or has it really just been exclusively in the print and play space?
No, I was very sort of holding back and not wanting to commit to, I don't know, putting a game out there that wasn't quite ready. So the development sort of feel that print and play has is perfect for me because I never think a game's finished. You can always improve it a little bit. And, after a year, you play it, review it, you want to change it a little bit more. So it's kind of agile in that format, right? Uh, but once you print, you put your name on it, and then you have sort of repercussions whether people like it or not, and your reputation starts to either go up or down. Um,
Interesting, interesting.
it was tricky, and I didn't think I wasn't ready for a Kickstarter because I think if you're going to do a Kickstarter, you need to have all the building blocks that go after that in place.
Sure.
Whether it's shipping, whether it's a website to collect sales after the Kickstarter, whether it's a mailing list and all of these things, you need a ton of stuff before you think, yeah, Kickstarter. It's a kick ender, really. It should be sort of towards the end of the process. So having it print and play is also not only agile, but it's a way to give back to the community who helped me design these games. Because it isn't just one person, right? It's like feedback, and there's
Oh,
illustrators, and
sure.
I like to work with artists and go back and forth and direct and sort of get the game to look as good as I can make it. It's not the best game in the world, but for me, it's like, yeah, this is great.
Well, I think what you're saying about a print and play never being finished, but a packaged game being done is super interesting. Professionally, I make video games, and a lot of them are mobile or online, and they have this extended live operations period where yeah, where you continue to change and update them and add content, fix bugs, whatever. It is interesting that that's something you can't really do in board games. If you have a reprint, you can do it. You can do expansions, obviously, like it
You can do
exists.
errata, but it's not cool.
Yeah, yeah, but like I never thought of this is the first time anyone has ever described a print and play to me as more of a living game, living document than just a single edition. Do you ever get like how do you capture that? Do you like, is it a version number? Like, how do you let people know that you've like changed it or updated it?
I wish I was that organized, but yeah, that would be the right way to do it. Thanks. I would
So
say also,
you'll just
once,
update the files and next time person downloads it, they get the newer version.
yeah, I'm a bit sporadic on how my systems are sort of organized, but yeah, that's the ideal situation. I usually put the date on it if it's updated, but
That is a
uh,
good way to do it.
that would be good. Because then I know when it came out as well. That helps. But also putting these games out for free, it's amazing the amount of volunteers that come and say, "Hey, by the way, I've translated your game into Italian. If you want to, use it, please let other people, play it." So because it's free, it's I don't feel bad about getting someone to translate the game for free and then use that to then make the game available to even more people. So it's a great way to give back to this board game community.
Well, and in terms of this, I mean, is it fair to say that, and I'm not to, I think it isn't meant to be loaded, but like presumably, since you're making print and plays and making them available free, you're not making money. This is just a hobby you're enjoying.
Kind of.
Um,
So I started self-publishing the hard way, which means without funding. Get a set of copies and take them to Game Market and see what happens. I had an online store live for a couple of years, and I was selling them through there, and it was great. So we have printed copies,
oh, look at
uh,
that! You do.
of every game that I think is worthwhile, and I have them, but I got to now factor in to send them to reviewers and all of that. There's Blood and Fortune, which is my first mistake. Beautiful mistake. Rock'em is in a box too. There you go.
Oh, yeah, that one. I like
And
that one.
Kika. Kika is maybe a game that you don't know about. It's a tile.
No.
So this is a tile laying game with various combinations of rules that you can add to it. Remember the was it 404, the Freedom
Yeah,
Freeze?
sure. Yeah, yeah, that gigantic. I remember that game.
This is kind of on the same thing. It's got 972 possible ways to recombine the rule cards that come in the game, and that gives you different styles of play. But essentially, it's not that they're not that different. It's a tile
And
laying where you
and
merge them.
presumably, if I remember my conversation about the Japanese indie scene, like you're able to, that is something you were able to manufacture within Japan, right? There's services, or did you do it?
There are, but I did it through China.
Oh, okay. And so are, but then are you shipping from Japan to folks, or are you using other services?
Right now, we don't print like large runs. I think Kika was 500, Hayes Island was 1,000, Rockemon was 1,000, and they come in a big box, and I have them just there, and I pack them and ship them as the orders come in. When my shop was live, it's kind of offline now because I'm dealing with Kickstarter.
Oh, you
Um,
are doing it. Is something live now, or you're just figuring it out?
I've successfully funded my third campaign, so we got a lot
Oh,
of
great. Oh, okay.
so,
It's been a while. Okay, so
yeah,
okay, so hold on a second. Then let's just tie this back into the story. So you're doing it independently. You're making it for free. You start going to Tokyo. You start going to the indie, whatever, the game show,
Tokyo
and
Game Market.
so Tokyo Game Market, and at some point you're like, hey, I'm going to go do this the hard way. You start printing your own. You have a
Yep.
web store. You're selling it.
Yep.
So then, at what point were you like, I'm going to go to the Kickstarter route?
Well, I made something which, well, I ended up making something which I thought I really want to make this my flagship product, and it's not a game, but it's game related. It's Coincides. This is a spinning dice. It's like a metal coin which acts like a top. You spin it, you put your finger on it, and it tells you the number of the value of the dice that you rolled. Uh, I've seen dice spinners before, but this one managed to forge all six of the role-playing polyhedral dice. So your D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20 into one coin. So on either side of the coin, there are different combinations of
Right.
numbers. And when you spin it and stop it, it'll tell you what you rolled based
Every
on.
single die, in a coin.
Yeah. Uh, and this is the first, well, the first was Coincides, well, Coincides Classic now, I suppose. And then this last year we did Cthulhu Coincides, and that added extra dice into the coin. And next year, well, it'll be this year now, we're going to do Cyber Coincides, a different design. Coincide, just coin and then sides. If you look up there, the Kickstarters tell you very well like what the product's all about.
Cool. I'm looking while you're talking.
And this was like a surprise for me because it was actually intended to be a design for the one player guild. Every year they make a commemorative coin, and they thought, well, we can make it spin and put a dice on it. And I entered into the competition to design the coin for them, but for some lucky accident, I was outvoted by another design. So I got to keep my design and make a very successful sort of product out of it. So that was kind of fortuitous.
And so the Kickstarters you have done are for these coins. Have you
There's,
done a board game Kickstarter yet, or?
that's the next challenge. Mainly, this is quite small and easy to ship. It fits through your letterbox even when
Yeah.
it's packed. So it was designed for that to be shippable. However, COVID came and ruined all the shipping plans we'd made. So not good. But my second Kickstarter was for a role-playing product. It's a magazine, so it was entered into the Zine Quest.
Oh,
They do
cool.
pretty simple black and white um, role-playing games. And this was my first one, uh, my first step into the role-playing scene, which is kind of like, what am I doing? But it's really fun. The story of this is I'm going to keep it short, but basically I play with my son in the car. We play an adventure where I guide the story and he makes decisions and we just roll to see what happens. And we've got to keep it very simple. So this simple system of rolling dice, which I call any, um, worked so well for us that I thought, well, I'd just publish it. I'll just put it in a book. I know how to graphic design. I know how to write. I know how to write the rules. We'll spend some time on this and put a Kickstarter for Zine Quest, which is a very low threshold, very easy to sort of,
Yeah, no, I've not been part of it, but I remember seeing it. Yeah, yeah.
super easy way into Kickstarter. If you want to learn to do a Kickstarter, choose either that project or the Make 100 project, and it'll give you a little boost.
So let's just yeah. So just that for those who aren't aware who have done Kickstarters, you can always do a Kickstarter, but Kickstarter has these sort of like
Events, yeah.
promotional event things where they're like,
Yeah.
hey, we want a bunch of campaigns where you will only make 100 of
Yeah.
what you're selling, or we're doing this thing which is all about little magazines. So you do your own campaign, but
Yeah.
it's part of this event, and then they'll promote you and do other things.
And I would say the Make 100 is better because if you choose to be part of a dedicated or focused campaign like Zine Quest is very much for role-playing games. Now you are swimming with a lot of other big fish, and
Sure.
all big fish catch the fish, and the little guys like the new guys like me, like, well, yeah, this wasn't such a good idea, but okay, it was fun. But on the other hand, the Make 100, it's a much broader spectrum of things, so you're likely to be maybe more successful doing that.
Sure,
You could
sure.
also do role-playing stuff or board game stuff in the Make 100 space. That's probably a better recommendation.
But so you did the zine one and did it, I presume it funded?
Yeah, so Coincides 1 was funded. Annie, my role-playing game, was funded, and then Cthulhu Coincides was funded. So we did okay.
And so, I mean, but presumably, I mean, but you're still teaching. This is still a hobby. It's just starting to make a little money, or are you?
With Corona being what it is, I lost a lot of my classes, so it helped me to have the
Oh,
time to spend doing the Kickstarter stuff for Coincides and get good at Kickstarter, so I can put my games on there when the time's right. And this is also new games that I'm designing, games that I've published already that I want to improve. For example, Haze Islands is great, but the components in it are really substandard for like most of the modern day board gamers'
sure,
tastes.
sure.
I'd like to have minis in there. If I just do a Kickstarter for the minis, then the game's already made. And I got plenty of them. So, uh, so that's it. I'm very ambitious with my like print runs, and then I think, well, yeah, I should figure out a way to sell these and not just have them in the house and go into game
Well,
market.
you can build walls and forts. I mean, all sorts of fun stuff you can do
Yeah.
with boxes.
Yep, yep, yep. Boxes. Oh man, I got a fetish for boxes. I think too many boxes in my
Too many boxes. Well,
boxes with
so
boxes inside them.
I mean, I think it's a really interesting story of entering the space in this very robust community, learning, engaging,
Oh,
building
yeah.
up your skills, building up your renown, and then moving through onto Kickstarter. One of the things, I mean, the reason we're happy, not the reason, we've actually interacted a lot, but you had reached out about a couple games that you're working on that are for conventions, and
Yep,
you said, "Hey, I've got, I think, hold on, Mismatch and You Win."
yep.
And I was sort of like, well, I'm not really attending any conventions soon, and so I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to play this. And then like, why don't we just get on a call and you can talk about how you got to it and what it is. So like, especially in this world where you're like, I mean, was it for the Tokyo market? Like what? How did what? Why were you like? I live in rural Japan. I'm gonna make a convention game. Like, how did that come about?
I don't know. Uh, I wake up every day and my brain says, "Yeah, today we're going to do this," and then we do that, and then we do something else, and whatever's sort of tickling or sort of rattling inside there, sort of like, yeah, that'd be really cool if I made that, and then I just go and make it. And sometimes it takes like half an hour, sometimes it takes 8 years, but I'll work on it whenever like I get that buzz, like, oh, I should be doing that now, and it's just the way I am, and instead of sort of trying to have a regular job. I'm just going to lean into it and you do that. So I do whatever comes to mind. And one of the games was how to have a replacement for rock, paper, scissors. That's probably how it started. Because rock, paper, scissors is fine, but it just kind of feels, a bit arbitrary.
Sure,
So
sure.
I wanted to also design a game. I'd seen a game called oh, what was it? Coin Age? Yeah. It was one of the first Kickstarters I backed. It was a game on a card, an area control game. You put coins on it. My God, this game was all on like one card. And then I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll try and design a game to. It was like a game without ties, which would quickly resolve and you'd know who'd won. And it was basically an arrow on a card, right?
Sure.
And one person would hold it, the other person would flip it, and whichever the direction the arrow pointed in, that person would win, right?
All right.
That's it.
Straightforward.
Like, well, that's all it was. So I made my business card out of it. This is my business card, or one of many business cards. It used to be called Flip, Massive Multiplayer Card Game. That was like maybe the version you might see on Board Game Geek was recorded as that. But it went through iterations. I'm not kidding you. It took me 8 years to make a one card game because every now and again I'd come back to it and think, yeah, I'm going to give it another crack this year and try and make a game. And I've got versions like stacked up over there of different versions of a one card game that you could play standing up. And yeah, anyway, I finally finished that project and now they are
And
ready.
that's the one with the QR code, right? That last one you picked up.
These are my business cards. Uh, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to turn the blur off so you can see better. But this is the first printed You Win card. This is the face of the card to tell you which way the arrow points, and this is the back of the card. So this is what you see before you flip it. As you can see, it doesn't matter which way the card is. The instructions are repeated upside down just at the bottom, so that you don't know which way the arrow is pointing. And you put it on your hand, and the other person does the same thing. So you both need to have these cards to play this game. Slightly different from my business card, which is like it's just a one flip of a card. This is a little bit more engaging because you have a few choices, right? You can choose how many of these cards you bid, right? So the more cards you bid, the more cards you are likely to win if you're the winner.
Right.
Two players have the cards on their hand. They flip each other's card at the same time, and you can flip it either this way or this way, and that makes the arrow point in a different direction. So you don't really know. Doesn't matter if you know what their card is because you don't know how they're going to flip. They might. It's not really bluffing. It's just random luck, really. So you flip the cards, and the arrows indicate who wins. Just to explain that simply, if both arrows point to you, you win. If they point to me, I win. If there's a tie where the arrows point differently, the person who bid the most cards wins.
That's interesting.
If that still results in a tie, which it might do if people are just playing one card, then you put those two cards together, shuffle them up, flip the top one, and it's whoever that arrow points to takes all of those cards. That's the You Win game. And that, for me, is still a little bit too complicated and messy because it has that tie. And I'm like, no, I've got to make a game without ties, God damn it. And some nice guy in the, I think it was Greg in the board game geek community says, oh, I have a similar idea that I haven't managed to finish off, but you can have it and use it in your game because it's essentially like what you're trying to do. And that came to be Mismatch.
Looks similar.
Yeah, pretty much the same text. The only difference is the resolution on the other side. For one, there's no arrows. So what you do before you play, you would say, hey, you want to play Mismatch? I've got some cards here. So do you. Let's do it. And then you decide who is going to be Miss and who's going to be Match. Right?
Okay.
Let's say I'm Miss and you're Match. And then we play the cards, right? And we flip the cards. And there'll be cards on your hand and cards on my hand. If the orientation of the card is the same, it's a match. If one different, it's miss. So it's always going to be a 50-50. Someone's going to win. That's it. There's no ties. And if you played 10 cards, then you can take up to 10 cards. If you played one card, you can only win one card. So the more you bid, the more likely you are to win, but it's still 50-50.
So have you had an opportunity to actually take this to a place where you play it standing and use it yet, or is it just all in your head at this point?
No, so when I launched the You Win game, it was in a contest, and I've not had the pleasure of playing it in a massive group of people, but I think it'll be fun because I get to pull this out every time I meet someone, and I have my sort of business card exchange little routine set up, right? It's super funny. It's super funny. And they always win, which is great. So I get to give them the business card. If they lose, I
Oh,
say, sorry, you can't have my business
very
card.
sneaky. You know the trick.
It's just banter, really. But at the contest, there was a another designer who got to play You Win for the first time in Poland in a group of 20 or 30 board gamers. So it was more of a sort of a party, and it worked. And he said it went really well. I'm like, okay, good, because 8 years is a long time to to be.
Well, yeah, sometimes it's interesting when things are simple. We've done a lot of games at Pencil First Games, and
Oh, yeah.
there was Herbaceous, which was very simple, and there've been other games since. It's that some people like more, such as Foliferous, depending on your taste.
Yep.
And I get asked that all the time, and a lot of times I'm like, man, to make to be as simple as Herbaceous and be fun is like that's I think sometimes even more difficult than when you add in the different systems and the different elements. When you strip it all away, it's like, is
Yep.
there enough here to make it work?
Yeah.
So,
But one more
okay,
thing. So once the in the contest, it was a the 2022 in hand contest, okay, and it got second place on one category. That was it. And I'm a sucker for winning. And if it doesn't do well, I'm like, that's it. It's not worth mentioning. And but I really do appreciate all the feedback that the people sort of gave for like such a small project, but for me, such a big project. And it got played at a convention in America, the 2022 Great Plains Gaming Project. They
hmm.
have a Great Plains Gaming Festival once a year, and Cameron, the organizer, I was sort of just like reaching out to a few conventions to see if this kind of thing exists, if this is like a possible. And someone said, you know what, we'll do it. And I gave them the files. They printed it at their Staples, like not cards with
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
just business cards, and they had a blast with it. And that went well. So I'm like, okay, so I'll take that feedback and I'll try and run it again this year with Mismatch as like a simpler, quicker version. I think You Win is the better game for like whatever a game is, right? But Mismatch just seemed simpler and lighter. And SaltCon 2023 in spring is going to be running the first Mismatch sort of event. And
Oh, very cool.
that's partly because I'm sort of interested in that event and wanted to support and sponsor them. So I sent them the prizes and the cards as a way for me to also get them printed so that I have my stock of cards to do it all in the same print run. And now they have, I think it's 40 of the beautiful coin sides that you could win if you go to SaltCon and you play this game called Mismatch.
Oh,
Super
very
simple.
cool.
It also gets to have their sort of SaltCon logo on
Oh,
there.
sure, of
So
course.
they get to keep the cards, and possibly if enough of the cards return to the organizers to claim for prizes, they can probably run it another time as well with smaller numbers and then smaller numbers, because once you give, there's 4,000 cards that have been shipped to America. Once these go two per attendee, so there's 2,000 people coming, they'll all get two cards. It's important that the event is sort of behind it. They get two cards with their program and instructions of what to do, what it is. And then between games, when they're standing in line or playing or waiting, they get to play Mismatch. They get to collect more cards. They might have a stack of cards by the end of the convention.
And
They
that's
can
how you get the prizes.
whoever has the most at the end of 2 days of gaming wins a prize, which will probably be a coincides plus something else that SaltCon has organized. But if you don't want to stay for 2 days, if you need to leave early, you can take what you have, go to reception, says, "What do I get for 20 cards?" Or you get a key ring, or "Thank you very much." But you can also just take the cards home
Sure.
because they're in your pocket, right? You can maybe want to play with your 20 friends when you have 40 cards or whatever at your next at your next game night with your friends or whatever. So
And
it's a game that you get to keep as well.
and is this so? I know you're doing your. I mean, you're very entrepreneurial in how you're looking at these different activities. Is this also a print and play thing, or is this?
All of them, mate. All of my games are going to be
I was just
printed.
checking. Okay, I didn't want to. So if somebody was like watching this and was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll print out 20 or whatever," they could just go
So,
to BGG and print it out.
so it's not on BGG. I put it on my website because
And
it's
this
one.
is we didn't talk about this. This is exist game with a one, right?
Yeah, EX First or EX1ST or Exist Games, whatever.
I'll
EX.
link it in the
Cool.
description.
Cool. I'm gonna keep making my games, and whether they're like massive titles or whatever, the bigger they get, the harder it is for people to print at the end of the day, right? So I don't mind putting the games online, maybe like a slightly lower resolution or like a slightly uh, not inferior product, but
I
an
get it.
easy to print product so that you can try the game. Because really, if people aren't playing it, they're not talking about it. They're not going to go out and buy it. That's at the end. And also, my website now collects your email address, which gives you access to the files, and that also sort of lets me let you know when I'm doing a Kickstarter
Sure.
once a year or twice a year, whatever. So it is kind of like a give and take thing now. But financially, there's no money involved. It's just the files are there if you want them.
Very cool. Well,
Yep.
you took us on quite a journey. I appreciate all of the information, and certainly we've talked about a lot of things. I'll drop some of the reviews I've done in the past, and then I'll link the website. And if folks want to try if they're willing to give up their email, they can try Mismatch or You Win or any of these games. Um, and that's awesome. So thanks so much for taking us through everything you've been doing.
Excellent.
So,
Thanks very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I want to say thanks for all the videos that you do
oh,
because
sure.
without people like you making stuff available for free for people who need to learn things about the industry, the details, the shipping, all of that stuff. So thanks, Edu. It's been really good knowing you for many years now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate it. Okay. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks. Bye.